Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a review of the Sigma 14mm f1.4 DGDN art lens, which is an ultra wide angle lens that Sigma says is really meant for astrophotography. But I decide to use it for other things because why not? It's a lens. It does have uses other than just astrophotography. We'll get into that in just a second. Now, this lens is built for the Sony E Mount as well as the E Mount Alliance that no one owns. I don't even want to keep doing it because very few people actually own it and use it. Maybe one day this will come to Canon's RF mount and maybe Nikon's Z mount, but until then, I shot it on the Sony A1 for my sample shots, but a lot of people with higher resolution cameras like the Sony A7R5 might want to use it with this because that gives you the most resolution possible and you have that 1.4 lens that is super unique. Now, I took it out to the Philadelphia Phillies game where I got wide shots of the stadium, got some photojournalistic style shots down on the field, and also took some wide angles that probably you would never use or do at 1.4, but I figured I would try it out. As well as taking it over to the Philadelphia Union game where I got up close and personal with some of the players and took a nice shot during the national anthem to show you the wide capabilities and if it's super sharp, super good, or super not. But Jared, did you shoot astro photos? Well, no, the Astros weren't in town. They were probably in Houston at the time. Oh, not those Astros. No, I didn't actually take any astro photos because when I was going out to go do that, we had something called the Canadian wildfire that blew into the area, making the skies impossible to see stars. Not to mention, we don't have dark skies anywhere near Philadelphia. You gotta go 4 hours away to try and even get that. But we do have sample images that Sigma did supply for astro photos that are pretty good, and we'll look at those when we dive into the images. But let's take a look at the outside of the lens. This is a beefy lens, like the Big Beef from Friendly's. Remember Big Beef from Friendly's, Steven? Did you ever eat at Friendly's? No. No, I used to. You could get a happy ending there. The ice cream sundae was called a happy ending in the 80s. Anyway, I see people talking about this lens and saying, it's so heavy and it's so big. It's big because it's a 1.4. Is it heavy? It weighs in at 2.58 pounds or 1,170 grams, whereas Sony, who has the 14 1.8, that thing weighs in at under just basically a pound. That is not that big of a lens. Compared to this is much larger, but you gotta think about it. If this is an astro lens, you are on a tripod. It doesn't matter how heavy the thing is or how big it is because it's about the quality you get from a 1.4. Now, speaking of tripods, you have built in an Arca Swiss plate right here on the tripod collar that is removable. Now, I wouldn't take it off because you probably would end up forgetting it somewhere, and when you need it, you wouldn't have it. I generally just flip it up like this when I'm shooting to keep it out of the way, even though there is no zooming with this lens at all because it's a 14mm, so I could kind of just shoot it just like this and the collar doesn't get in the way. Now, on the side of the lens, you have your normal switches. You can do locking and smooth turning of the aperture ring, but I think the biggest switch on here is a manual focus lock switch. Now, it doesn't actually physically lock the manual rotation right here, but it does lock it in when you're using the camera. So if you lock in on the Milky Way, a star at a distance, and you don't want it to accidentally slip, you focus it, you lock that manual focus lock in, and it's not gonna shift or change. That's a big deal for the astrophotographers. Now let's take a look at the lens cap. Now, normally we don't really bring up lens caps too much because what's the point? But this one has these two little switches right here that pop out like this, and you can slide in, Sigma says this, you can slide in filters into here and then lock it in and save it. Now that's for the back element. I know I'm moving fast, Steven, but back here you can lock in some filters when you're shooting, and when you're not using them, you can store them in the lens cap itself, which is pretty cool. Sigma recommends that you don't do it for a long time because they'll probably get bent or they might get damaged in there at some point, but this is the front element. You cannot put a filter on the front of this lens, and that's understandable, and it's okay. Now, for those who are going to be out in the wilderness photographing and you want to put a lens heater on, you can wrap a lens heater around this lens. You do have that option because there is a lens heater retainer. So you put a lens heater on the outside of the lens to keep it from getting moisture or fogging up, because that's what might happen when the temperature drops. That is something you don't want to have happen when you're shooting your astro types of photos. So that basically takes us around the outside of the lens. It feels really nice in the hands. It's an art lens. It's sturdy. Sigma has done a fantastic job with making lenses that are much better than they were 15, 12, 10 years ago, because their quality has just stepped up tremendously, and the art line is absolutely fantastic. Now, normally you wouldn't take this out to a Phillies game or a soccer game because it's not really a photojournalistic type of lens. I like shooting wide, but when you can add 1.4 to your wide shots, it's going to make such a difference from 2.8 and absolutely f4. Now, I didn't have the Sony 1.8 to run that through its tests and compare it to here. It's going to be very similar because 1.4 to 1.8 isn't that big of a difference. But look at this. This shot of my friend Dina before the Union game is shot at 1.4, which is wide open. Now we go to 2.8. You see what that looks like. Now, f4. You can see the difference from 1.4 to 2.8 to f4. When you look at them all side by side, you can absolutely see the separation and the difference. I mean, look at this photo of the soccer player stretching. Do I see vignetting around the edges at 1.4? The answer is yes, I do. Do I care about that? No, I don't. But the fact that you can separate the subject from the background is what is going to separate your images from someone else. Now, it's not a zoom. Sigma has a 14 to 24 2.8. Sony has a 12 to 24 2.8. That's about $3,000. They also have the older 12 to 24 f4, which is a lens that I would never purchase at this point because it's old, it's out of date, and you're honestly better off buying the Sigma 14 to 24 2.8 for $1,300. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you FroPak 3 in action on this image taken with the 14mm 1.4, starting with Zoolander, followed by Walter White, Prestige Worldwide, November Rain, Mount Airy, Mentos, King Contrast, Eckert, Capone, Canadian Tuxedo, Almost Famous, and Fifth Element. But my all-time favorite preset right here with one click from FroPak 1 is Skittles. Boom. Look how good that looks. So if you want to speed up your raw workflow, give yourself a great starting point, or just have presets that actually work, we created 15 custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPak3. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick up FroPak 3 right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get the triple play bundle that includes Skittles as part of FroPak 1, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Now let's head out to Citizens Bank Ballpark, where I was out on the field before the game, and some of the players come over to sign autographs for the kids because, well, they're baseball players getting paid a lot of money. They should make a kid feel good by signing something. So look at what you get when you get up close and personal with the subjects. Look at the background. Look at how the light stanchions in the back of the stadium blow out and separate. That's not going to happen at f4. You are just getting such great separation, and it just separates your images from everyone else. You get great colors, you get great tones, the focus is perfectly fine. When I tried to get some more photojournalistic style images or action shots of the players running off the field back into the dugout, the focus is not going to keep up as well. Even though it has the HLA motors, which are going to be pretty fast, you got to remember this has 19 elements in the lens. That's a lot of glass to move. And it's not expected that it's going to nail things time and time again and track the subject for action, because that's not really what it's designed for. Now, when I used it up close and personal with the subjects, great. With the action, yeah, it missed a few, and you're only going to get 15 frames a second, but again, it's not really designed for that, but it can help separate your images from everyone's else. You just have to move your feet because you don't have that zoom. Now, a couple more down on the field right here of Castellanos signing. He signs every single game. I just love the colors and tones that you can get. And right behind him, you can see how the subjects behind him, he's waiting to sign autographs, or the people that want autographs are out of focus. The colors and tones, tremendous. And all of of this is shot at 1.4. That is fantastic. But where this lens surprised me, because honestly, when Sigma told me about this lens, I was like, I don't want to review it. And then Steven's like, you should probably review it. And I was like, okay, Steven, you're right. I should probably review it. And that's why I got it to take out here. Now, where this lens shines, in my opinion, and I think that it would be perfect in my camera bag, is doing those wide architectural shots of stadiums. Sure, I like having the ability to go to 11 millimeters like I did at the World Series last year, but that is an adapted Canon EF lens to RF, and it's an f4, and it's not as sharp as it used to be. It slipped somewhere along the way, and it's not as good. But this 14 millimeter up high in the stadium behind home plate looks great. Now, I shot this at 7.1. You can shoot it wide open at 1.4, but what is the point of doing that when you want to get everything super sharp and super in focus and get everything as good as it can be? This one was shot at 7.1, and it looks fantastic, edge to edge, sharp all the way through. I love it. Quick tip for you guys. Do you see how the picture is pitching right now? If you're ever going to do a wide shot of a sporting event or any event, make sure there's actual action going on when you're taking the photo, because nothing is worse than using a photo or taking a photo of like the grounds crew out there doing nothing and there's no action. Even in a wide angle shot, this action means a lot. You've got the batter, you got the pitcher, and everybody else in the field. Now let's jump over to Subaru Park where the Union play soccer, because I shot this one at f3.5 during the national anthem. Would I like to go a little wider? Sure. If I had the ability to, I would like it, but I did this one only at f3.5, and edge to edge, it is fantastic. The results are right here. The colors, the clarity, the sharpness, even at 3.5, when you stop down just a little bit, makes this lens tremendous. Oh, and it also doesn't hurt to bang out some Skittles on these photos, because it takes it from blah to boomify when you just hit it with some Skittles. Now, I should mention that there are 11 aperture blades in this lens. Generally speaking, you sometimes see that there's 9, so maybe that will give you better bokeh in the background or better sharpness. That's for you guys to determine. I really don't care about stuff like that because it just works. In terms of close focusing, you saw that I got close to some of the subjects. 11.9 inches is the close focus that you can get to your subject to make sure that, that's the closest you can get to them to have focus. Anything closer, it's not going to focus on the subject. Jumping back to Subaru Park, this is generally speaking not something you would shoot with a 14 millimeter. It's the only lens I took out to the Phillies and to the soccer was 14, and when I showed up, they're like, what are you doing with just a 14? I'm like, well, I'm testing it out. I'm not allowed to tell you what I'm testing, but anyway, this goalie diving is at 1.4. Sharp all the way through. Do you have vignetting around the edges? Yes. So what? Not a big deal. You can clean that up without a problem in Lightroom or inside the camera when you have the vignetting control on. But I was just amazed that everything is sharp through and through with this because it's such a wide angle shot. But now let's get into some astro photos. These were supplied by Sigma, so of course they're going to be pretty good. Let's jump into this one, which I thought was a pretty awesome shot that they took. By the way, this is what it looks like. This is what they gave me. And then this one is what it looks like when you hit it with some Skittles. And that's one click with Skittles. And yeah, it actually looks better. I'm going to tell you, it does look better. Settings, 22 seconds, f1.4, ISO 1600. So the point of having a 1.4 is that it gives you the ability to keep the ISO down lower when you're doing astro photos, which will make it a much cleaner image in terms of grain and noise. That's what you're getting with the 1.4. General rule of thumb, you do not want to go above 25 seconds when you're trying to capture the stars because the Earth is spinning and the light will start to blur ever so slightly. Now, I'm not sure what types of corrections the Sigma did with this, but we do actually have a video on astrophotography that we did a couple of years ago that did really well. It's a good, quick video. That is linked down below so you can check it out for the tips for shooting astrophotography, even if you have a kit lens. You can do this even with basic kit glass. Anybody can do it. You just need that tripod. Go check out that video. But this looks fantastic at 1.4. It really does. The colors, the tones, the clarity, obviously you hit it with Skittles, it looks much better. The second shot that they had right here, this is without Skittles, this is with Skittles, taken also at 1.4. Now we're at 3200 ISO. I mean, it's great for astro. You can see that even with their sample images. I know they're not going to send us bad sample images, and I wish I could have gone gone out and done it myself, but like I said, the wildfires got in the way and we don't have great stuff to shoot over here. So how much is it? This is a $1,600 lens. That is pretty expensive. Sony's 14 1.8 is on sale right now at $1,500, so it's $100 less, and you have to decide, do you want something that's larger? Do you want something that's wider aperture at 1.4 or slightly smaller? But remember, the Sony is native glass and this isn't native glass. But from what I've seen, this is fantastic. I rather have a 1.4. I want to be different than everybody else because I just think you're going to get just better zhush with that 1.4. That's that separation, that's that quality, that's that color that you're going to get here. That's not to say that the Sony's bad. The Sony's a great little lens. It's much smaller. Let me jump in here real quick and say, would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? Well, if you said yes, head on over to FroKnowsPhoto.com, look for this orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm going to send you that guide for free. Now, there are some other lens options that you might want to consider if you don't want a 1.4 that is just a prime 14mm. Sigma has the 14 to 24 2.8. I took this on the road with me when I was out with Bernie Sanders, and this is a fantastic lens for $1,300 on the E Mount or on the L Mount Alliance cameras. This is going to be fantastic. That is for if you don't need the 1.4. You can do Astro with this, but it's a 2.8. It's not going to be the best of the best with honors, but like I said, you can shoot Astro with any lens. This is great if you need to run and gun and you need the zooming option. The other option I mentioned earlier was this one. This is that 12 to 24 f4 from Sony that I think is absolutely terrible, so I wouldn't look at it at this point, plus it's an f4. But we all know that you're waiting for the two most important tests. That is the wind tunnel test as well as the sniff test, which we're gonna do right now. Smells smoky, Steven. Smells like Smokey the Bear's butthole. Which I don't know what that actually smells like, because do bears have buttholes? Well, I guess the Charmin bears have buttholes because they're always wiping with Charmin. Bing! Anyway, wind tunnel test. Well, that stopped the wind better than anything I've ever seen, so passed the wind tunnel test. At the end of the day, this is a $1,600 lens. It's expensive. If you are an Astro shooter and that's your main focus, you can't go wrong with putting this in your bag. It's going to give you the results that you want. The 1.4 is awesome. You can use it for architectural shots. You can use it for landscape shots. You saw the stadium shots. They look fantastic. I could see using this when I'm with photojournalistic style people that I need to shoot. If I'm in a dressing room, a locker room, I need to shoot wide, I need to be on stage shooting from behind, I rather have the ability to shoot at f2.2 or 2.5 than be locked in to 2.8 all the time. I just love what primes give you. It's a trade-off, not having zoom versus having zoom, but this, I was surprised. I'm glad that I was talked into using this by Steven and having Sigma send it out because I really like it. I hope that this lens finds its way onto Canon, and I hope that it finds its way on to Nikon at some point. But that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.